The early 80s turned American cities into cinematic war zones. New York, Los Angeles, and everywhere in between became backdrops for a specific kind of movie. Urban decay as visceral threat, where broken systems, violent gangs, and societal collapse felt less like fiction and more like evening news. This was exploitation cinema capturing Reagan-era anxieties about crime, class, and cities spiraling beyond control. Tonight we're exploring 10 films that weaponized urban landscapes, revenge on Manhattan streets, high schools as battlegrounds, punk squatters in abandoned suburbs, and vigilantes filling the void left by failed institutions. Some came from American filmmakers documenting their own crumbling cities, others from Italian directors importing American urban nightmares and filtering them through genre excess. These aren't polished studio productions. They're grimy, angry, and uncomfortable, films that understood cities could be as terrifying as any haunted house, and that sometimes the most frightening monsters wear human faces and walk familiar streets. 1990. The Bronx Warriors. 1982. The Bronx as lawless wasteland ruled by gangs in the near future. Enzo G. Castellari's post-apocalyptic Exploitation follows a wealthy heiress who flees her corporate inheritance into gang territory, triggering corporate mercenaries and gang warfare. Vic Morrow plays mercenary Hammer with cold professionalism, treating gang elimination as business contract. Mark Gregory's Trash leads the writers against both corporate power and rival factions. Castellari shoots New York locations to suggest post-apocalyptic decay through abandoned buildings and desolate streets. Gang designs draw from The Warriors and Escape from New York. Roller skating hockey players, theatrical performers, leather-clad bikers, each faction sporting distinctive visual identity. Practical action sequences deliver vehicle chases, explosions, and brawls on impressive scale given budget constraints. The film operates as Italian riff on American post-apocalyptic cinema, borrowing freely while adding Castellari's action craftsmanship. Violence is substantial, but action-oriented rather than horror-focused. The synthesizer score adds futuristic atmosphere to contemporary locations transformed through creative camera work. The film spawned a sequel and influenced countless Italian post-apocalyptic productions, representing exploitation cinema's international exchange. Italian filmmakers taking American urban anxiety and returning it filtered through different cultural lens and production values that prioritize creativity over budget limitations. Class of 1984-1982. High school as literal war zone. Mark L. Lester imagines a music teacher trying to maintain order against a gang of students who've turned the school into their criminal empire, dealing narcotics in the hallways and terrorizing anyone who opposes them. When attempts to reach them through education fail and violence escalates to targeting his pregnant wife, pedagogy becomes violent retribution. Perry King's idealistic teacher watches his faith in the system crumble as administrators prove impotent and police indifferent. Roddy McDowall haunts every scene as the biology teacher who's given up entirely, teaching with a pistol in his desk drawer. A man who's seen too many years of deterioration to believe reform is possible. Timothy Van Patten's gang leader, Peter Steegman, understands that youth and broken systems protect him from consequences, playing calculated psychopathy with genuinely unsettling menace. The high school is decaying fortress overrun by violence, graffiti covering every surface, metal detectors at entrances, hallways that feel genuinely dangerous. Arriving just as news media obsessed over youth crime and urban decay, the film tapped into genuine anxieties about education system collapse. Violence escalates steadily from vandalism to assault to attempted homicide, building toward a climax where the teacher abandons every principle he stood for. Alice Cooper's title song and Lalo Schifrin's score add punk energy to sequences that balance social commentary, with exploitation thrills. No solutions offered, only grim acknowledgement that some situations have no good answers. Potent despite dated elements, its core anxieties about institutional failure feeling disturbingly contemporary. Repo Man, 1984. Otto gets recruited into the surreal world of automobile repossession in Alex Cox's Los Angeles. where repo men chase cars for a living, government agents hunt a Chevy Malibu containing something radioactive and alien, and punk philosophy collides with consumer capitalism. Emilio Estevez brings perfect disaffected youth energy, his punk cynicism gradually giving way to something resembling purpose. Harry Dean Stanton's veteran repo man, Bud, becomes unlikely mentor, spouting philosophy about the work while demonstrating ruthless efficiency. Cox shoots L.A. as sun-bleached wasteland where strip malls create visual monotony characters rail against. The generic product labels, food, drink, beer, emphasize consumer culture's soullessness. The punk soundtrack, featuring Black Flag, Circle Jerks, and Iggy Pop, becomes integral identity. The supporting cast populates a Los Angeles that feels simultaneously realistic and completely alien. The science fiction elements remain deliberately ambiguous, glowing trunk contents becoming MacGuffin, driving increasingly bizarre situations without full explanation. Tracy Walter delivers memorable performance as Miller, spouting theories about cosmic unconsciousness between repo runs. The film balances satire, punk aesthetic, and genuine emotion without overwhelming any element. Repo Man captured Reagan-era alienation and punk ethos in ways that feel timeless, despite being utterly of its moment. Instant cult classic proving low-budget independent cinema could be genuinely subversive. Alphabet City, 1984. 24 hours. That's what Johnny has to deliver money to his mob bosses while extracting his girlfriend and younger sister from Manhattan's Lower East Side before his planned exit triggers violent retaliation. Amos Poe follows the young drug dealer through one night attempting escape from the criminal empire he's helped build. Vincent Spano plays street-smart desperation, a kid who rose too fast and now recognizes the trap he's built around himself. Poe shoots the Lower East Side with neon noir aesthetic that transforms the neighborhood into visual spectacle. Colored lighting and atmospheric smoke, turning urban decay into something almost beautiful. Oliver Wood's cinematography makes poverty and crime look striking in ways that serve style over strict realism. The electronic score adds synth-heavy atmosphere that dates the film, but captures its specific moment perfectly. Real-time urgency propels Johnny through dangerous territories, while the clock ticks toward his deadline. The film operates more as character study than straightforward thriller, interested in Johnny's internal conflict and the relationships he's trying to preserve. The violence, when it comes, is swift and brutal. Poe understands that in this world, death arrives suddenly without warning. The film bombed commercially but has gained appreciation as stylish snapshot of pre-gentrification Manhattan, capturing a neighborhood and era before economic forces transformed the Lower East Side entirely. Vigilante, 1982. When his wife is beaten and his son killed during a home invasion, and when the perpetrator receives a lenient sentence from a judge more interested in clearing dockets than delivering justice, Eddie Marino's faith in institutions dies with his child. William Lustig follows the factory worker as he joins an organized vigilante group dispensing street justice across New York City. Robert Forster brings blue-collar authenticity to a man whose entire world collapses in a courtroom, capturing the specific rage of someone who played by society's rules only to watch those rules protect criminals instead of victims. Fred Williamson steals the film as Nick, charismatic leader of the vigilante squad who's already embraced extra-legal justice. Their dynamic shifts from mentor-student to equals as Eddie fully commits to vigilantism. Early 80s New York is shot as urban war zone, where crime is omnipresent and authority either corrupt or impotent. The courtroom sequences are particularly effective, showing a system that treats violent crime as administrative inconvenience. Action sequences are brutal and direct. Lustig favors visceral impact over stylization, showing violence as ugly necessity. Jay Chataway's score adds urban tension without romanticizing vigilantism. Arriving during the early 80s revenge film cycle, Lustig's film is grimier and more nihilistic than most. It offers no easy answers about justice versus revenge, instead presenting a broken system and asking what rational people do when legal remedies fail completely. Suburbia, 1983. Penelope Spheris documents punk youth culture through narrative fiction, following runaways who squat in abandoned tract homes and form makeshift family bound by shared rejection of mainstream society. They call themselves TR, the rejected, creating their own rules in spaces suburban development left behind. When their presence antagonizes local citizens, particularly a vigilante citizens patrol, the conflict escalates toward inevitable violence. The cast of mostly non-actors brings authentic punk energy, many drawn from the actual LA scene. Spheris treats punk philosophy seriously, understanding it's as much about creating alternative community as rejecting the dominant one. The abandoned suburban development becomes dystopian landscape where the American dream has literally collapsed, leaving empty structures for outcasts to inhabit. Performance sequences featuring DI, the Vandals, and TSOL capture genuine scene energy, the club becoming temporary sanctuary. Spheris shows the reality: hunger, cold, constant threat of violence from both authorities and vigilantes. The violence, when it erupts, is sudden and brutal rather than stylized, emphasizing real-world consequences. Suburbia captures a specific moment in punk history with documentary authenticity wrapped in narrative framework, earning its status as essential punk cinema through honest portrayal of youth rebellion and the costs of creating your own family when the one you were born into has failed completely. Tenement, 1985. A South Bronx apartment building under siege. Gang members recently released from jail return for revenge against residents who testified, taking over the building and systematically terrorizing tenants. Roberta Finlay's nasty exploitation follows working-class residents pushed past breaking point. Single mothers, elderly couples, struggling families who've had enough. Joe Lynn's gang leader delivers genuinely unsettling menace, his violence arbitrary and cruel without pattern or mercy. The residents' transformation from victims to fighters happens gradually as they realize authorities won't save them. The dilapidated building is shot with grimy authenticity that makes the confined setting genuinely claustrophobic, narrow hallways and locked doors creating constant spatial tension. The film's politics are complicated. Simultaneously, exploitation of urban poverty, an angry statement about communities abandoned by institutions meant to protect them. The violence becomes almost unwatchable. As both sides escalate, Findlay refusing to sanitize or stylize the carnage. The cathartic climax delivers resolution through extreme violence that raises questions about whether the film celebrates or critiques what it depicts. 80s exploitation at its grimmest, using horror framework to explore class rage and institutional failure. Mean-spirited, ugly, and effective at creating sustained dread through realistic urban nightmare where help never arrives. Ms. 45, 1981, Abel Ferrara shoots Thana's transformation from mute garment worker to avenging angel across grimy early 80s Manhattan with raw documentary-like intensity. 2 attacks in one day, first in an alley on her way home from work, then in her own apartment by a burglar, break something fundamental inside her. She ends the second assault with fatal violence, takes the deceased attacker's pistol, and begins hunting predatory men across New York City. Zoe Lund's entirely physical performance carries the film, delivering one of the most powerful silent performances in exploitation cinema. Her muteness becomes weapon rather than weakness, as she learns to weaponize men's underestimation. The film operates as both exploitation and feminist statement, while refusing comfortable messaging. Thana's justified rage transforms into something more disturbing as violence becomes increasingly indiscriminate. She starts targeting genuine threats, but gradually her definition of predator expands to include any man who looks at her wrong. Joe Delia's synth score adds dreamlike quality to sequences that feel nightmarish and cathartic simultaneously. Ferrara captures New York at its grittiest: Times Square peep shows, garment district sweatshops, streets where danger lurks in every interaction. The city becomes hunting ground where gender dynamics are literally matters of life and death. The Halloween party climax delivers spectacular carnage and devastating emotional payoff. Thana dressed as a nun while dispensing final judgment. Ms. 45 remains one of the most powerful and controversial revenge films ever made, refusing to sanitize trauma or provide easy catharsis. exploitation cinema that genuinely earns its transgressive reputation through Lund's committed performance and Ferrara's unflinching direction. Street Trash, 1987. Homeless people in Brooklyn drink contaminated liquor called Tenafly Viper that causes them to literally dissolve into multicolored goo. J. Michael Muro's Melt movie operates as social commentary on Reagan-era treatment of society's most vulnerable, though politics remain as messy as its spectacular practical effects. Jennifer Aspinall's Melt effects are spectacularly disgusting. Bodies dissolve in vibrant colors, flesh bubbling and liquefying in ways both horrifying and cartoonish. The ensemble cast populates a junkyard community where homeless veterans and outcasts survive through improvised economy. Mike Lackey plays Fred, trying to protect his younger brother while navigating dangerous social dynamics, including a crime boss who rules the junkyard like feudal lord. The cast brings unexpected humanity to characters who exist in exploitation framework. Muro shoots Brooklyn locations with grimy authenticity, making the junkyard feel like genuine community. The film's tone careens wildly. Dark comedy about melting bodies crashes into social commentary about veteran neglect, then veers into gross-out horror before landing on occasional genuine pathos. A violent subplot pushes into territory that feels exploitative, even by the film's transgressive standards. Street Trash found cult status through home video, where gore fans appreciated the effect's spectacle. It remains divisive. Some see sharp satire about disposable people in disposable society. Others find tasteless exploitation using homelessness for shock value. The New York Ripper, 1982. A serial killer stalks Manhattan, calling police in a bizarre Donald Duck voice while targeting women with blade violence. Lucio Fulci's nasty giallo follows a detective through early 80s. New York's seedier corners, live peep shows, underground clubs, spaces where exploitation and violence feel interchangeable. Jack Headley's burnt-out detective navigates increasingly disturbing case connections to the underground scene and a damaged psyche. The killer's duck voice should be ridiculous, but somehow makes everything more unsettling, suggesting psychological damage so severe it's manifested this vocal tic. The practical gore effects are characteristically Fulci, unflinching, explicit, designed to provoke. The blade violence is staged with clinical precision that makes it more disturbing than stylized slasher sequences. Francesco De Masi's sleazy jazz score provides perfect atmosphere for the Times Square setting. Fulci shoots New York as moral cesspool, his camera lingering on decay and vice with barely concealed contempt. The porn theaters, peep shows, and massage parlors aren't just setting but indictment of urban moral collapse. The climax reveals the killer's identity and motivation rooted in childhood trauma and obsession that doesn't mitigate the preceding exploitation. The New York Ripper remains one of Fulci's most controversial films, accused of profound misogyny even by giallo standards. It's genuinely unpleasant viewing, representing Italian horror at its most transgressive and least concerned with likability. A film that pushes boundaries specifically to provoke reaction. If you love discovering forgotten horror and cult cinema, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films time forgot. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.